When I've got an inspiration or an idea that I want to turn into a painting and I'm not actually sitting in front of it, I'm not directly observing it, then I have to rely on other essentially earlier observations that I've done and put down in my sketchbooks. I get a chance to look through and see if there's a subject that's already drawn. Maybe I drew it when I was on location like that one, or some other idea that I've kind of sat and developed in the sketchbook in some other way but perhaps never turned into a painting. I have a notion actually now to do a painting as the winter solstice is approaching. I've got a notion to do a painting of a scene that will allow me to really show off the dark sky and the bright full moon and what that does to the landscape. So I was looking through sketchbooks to find something, and I found this kind of scene that I drew. I don't have a date on it, but it's been some time, of a barn sitting out in a field, and you can see that it's very much a sketch. I've got a nice kind of drawing of the outlines of the barn, and I've got some indications of where there are fields and trees and posts and that sort of thing. And I thought this would actually make a nice drawing to start with, to create a composition that would allow me to paint a winter night scene, maybe on the solstice when it's really dark and we maybe have a full moon hanging in the sky. So this is what I do. I start with a sketch like this, something that's drawn on a piece of paper in one of my sketchbooks, and it just looks like it'll fit for the inspiration that I've got. So I transfer that. I've already done that for this video, but I then transfer that to, in this case, another sketchbook, and I start by drawing the outlines of more or less the proportions I think I'll be working with my painting. I think I'm going to be working, in this case, on 1/8 of a sheet, which is about 7 by 11, and this is about the proportions. It might be off a little bit, but this is about the proportions. So I've transferred more or less my drawing, my composition. I have cropped it a little bit. We're not seeing as much of the sides of the barn. We're really focused on the roofs of the barn. And I've drawn in a little bit of a sketchy landscape back in there. And what I really want to do now is develop a value sketch to go along with my painting, and that's what we're going to do now. Now, since this is going to be a winter night and we've got this bright big moon hanging in the sky, actually near the horizon, so despite the fact that it's dark, if the moon is that low and it's full, it's probably really not that late in the evening, because that's the way it is. But we do need a dark sky, so I'm going to get that in as quickly as I can just by really using the side of my pencil. There. Now I've got that in, and there is a distant mountain back here in the background. Now that's going to be pretty dark, so I'm going to put that in dark. And again, at this stage I'm really playing with shapes, I'm playing with the ideas, and I'm getting the shape in of this distant hill that, again, it's going to be pretty dark. Having started with my pencil in here, I've got some darker areas in the sky than I want, and the way I lift those actually is to, I just pick it up with some, I get a kneaded eraser. I can pick up some of that extra mark, that graphite mark that's on there from the pencil. Lighten that up. Kneaded erasers are really handy for that. They're handy for a lot of things, but they're really handy for actually picking up dark marks that are too dark for what you intended. So I get my dark hill back in here. There are back in here this is a rural scene with a barn in it, and there are open fields back here, and they're going to stay pretty white. Having said that, I may put a little bit of value on them. I'm just going to do that by rubbing my finger across it and getting a little bit of gray value. Now, bright full moons on snow usually really lights up that snow. It really looks quite white, but I'm going to decrease it just a little bit, because actually in a painting, a really stark contrast like black against white can help pull the painting apart, which I don't want to do. So let me keep working here. It looks like I've put in what's going to be a line of trees that's separating a couple fields back in the background. I'm going to put those in some fairly dark gray with the side of my pencil. Notice I'm not getting too detailed. I'm not too worried about individual tree trunks particularly in an area that is that far away, is that far in the distance in our composition, and will be in our painting as well. I'm going to put another line here maybe to separate a field, and I have another tree line right here sort of in the middle ground, and it covers a lot of territory, and I'm going to actually want this to be pretty dark. There's some trees, individual trees sitting here along kind of the edge of a field near the barn. I'm going to leave some white space for those, just so I can show where there might be some highlighted areas on those tree trunks from the moonlight that's out there. So there's my distant tree line. I think I had another one designed right in here that was, again, sort of separating a nearer field. And I'm going to show that. I'm going to leave some white areas back in there just to show there's a difference between this tree line, which is working its way in that direction, and this other tree line, which actually works its way along what looks like the edge of a ridge right there. I do have some individual trunks that meet these highlighted areas. I'm going to put those in. And all of these vertical elements, the tree trunks here, the cupolas actually on the roof of the barn, those all will give us opportunities to show cast shadows, moon shadows, if you will, from the bright full winter moon that we're seeing on the solstice. Great, and then we get to our barn, which is obviously it's different from everything else in the painting because it's angular, so it's going to look different. But I do want to get in the shade, really the dark areas that are going to be on the back side of this barn. Because the moon is here and the barn is here, there's going to be cast shadow coming off of that barn. Now I'm going to make these shadows actually lighter than the barn itself. Here's the back wall of this shed that sits back, kind of, there's a ridge that drops down there. It's kind of down below the ridge. And I'm going to connect that wall to the wall of this barn here. So I get a big shape. Now the cupolas are here for a really important reason, and that gives us the opportunity really to show moon shadows. So if the moon is there and the cupolas are here, that's really the direction of the shadows. And because the moon is so low, these are long shadows that really cast all the way across the roof of the barn. And again, because they're shadows that are on snow, they're going to be lighter. I'm going to make them lighter in value. They're still dark, but they're lighter in value than the actually sides of the cupola, if you see those here. So there's our long shadows being cast by those cupolas onto the roof and actually beyond because of the moon that's hanging so low in the sky. I have a post here with kind of a guy post there attached to it and a couple rails. I'm going to put those in with marks. The light from the moon is actually coming in this direction. So we're going to make this shadow go in this direction. Now the tree line over here, there will be some shadows cast from these trees as well. These are lots of trees and branches, so they're casting shadows out into this moonlit field. So that's how I develop a value sketch when I'm about to do a painting. I've been able to play around with a value arrangement I may use in my painting, but it gives me a chance also to make some changes before I go into that watercolor painting that could be hard to change once I've got paint down on the paper. One of the things is I want to make sure that the top of this cupola shows up really well as if it's got snow laying on it, so it's pretty light. And I want the point of it really poking up and overlapping that tree line back there. In real life, both of these cupolas are likely to have snow sitting on them, the same amount of snow, but this cupola is poking up into a white area. So I am deliberately going to change the value on that. It may end up looking like snow because it'll have some blue color, but I want the contrast of that pointy cupola here on this lighter snow field, and I want this one to be really quite white so that it contrasts nicely and overlaps that tree line back there. That was one of the changes I wanted to make, and I actually think that I'm going to make this wall of the barn a bit darker than I've got it. I don't want stark edges, so it'll be a soft transition from here to this back wall. But I do want a contrast between that actually and the wall on this shed that's attached to the barn. And then because this shed roof is back here, there's probably the big barn is casting a shadow on it, and I'm going to get that shadow in there again very lightly, so that I can show the edge of that roof sort of hanging out there over, again, this white field in the background. I'm pretty happy with this value sketch the way it is. Now, it's not uncommon for me to redo these, to have done this one and not be happy with it, and really be beyond the point where I can pick up and change values. So what I'm often do, I'm happy with this and I'm going to use it for the painting, but what I often do is then draw another. I'm really not happy with that, so I draw out another box and I try another arrangement of values. That's my process. I wanted to really show you how I do that, how I manage to take something older like this sketch and turn it into a painting by first exploring that inspiration and idea in the form of a value sketch like this. I hope this was informative. I hope it's going to help you out, and frankly I hope you'll adopt this this practice of making value sketches of your own for your own paintings. It allows you, again, to work out compositional problems. It allows you to work out the value arrangement that you'll transfer into color when you get to your painting, and overall is just an extremely valuable exercise in helping you compose and design your paintings.